Hey, aloha, and welcome to Stan the Energy Man. Stan Osserman here on ThinkTech Hawaii. And today's show, I was supposed to have Mr. Hank Rogers as a guest, but he had a meeting pop up, so we moved him a little later in the month. And we're going to talk about energy and power in a little bit different context than we normally do. And because I set up the show to talk a little bit about what's going on in the world with hydrogen, we'll talk about that too. And to start off with, this is an important week around the world for hydrogen because a little known fact in Hawaii, but a pretty big fact for people that deal with hydrogen is the 8th of October is traditionally Hydrogen Day. And to celebrate Hydrogen Day in Hawaii, my friends at HCAT have set up a program for hydrogen on the 8th, and we can throw that website up. And in the program description, we'll have the actual link if you want to register for this. But it's on Thursday, 8th of October from 9 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. They're going to have video tours. They're going to have a trivia section, and they're going to have a panel discussion, which includes folks from the Department of Energy, the State Energy Office, Hawaii Gas, and HNEI, which is a university research group that especially focuses on hydrogen and has been doing hydrogen work mostly for the Office of Naval Research for many, many years. So should be an interesting event. And if you want to learn about hydrogen and what's going on in Hawaii with hydrogen, seems like a pretty good forum to listen to. The State Energy Office should be represented by Scott Glenn, the new head of the State Energy Office, and he seems to be a pretty positive guy on hydrogen, so ought to be a good discussion. Around the world, some of the other stuff going on that's come up on my radar is there are actually two announcements recently on the aviation side regarding hydrogen. One was Airbus, which is Boeing's big competitor from the European side, has announced that they're going to have 3 aircraft running on liquid hydrogen by 2035. One is a commuter electric prop airplane, which can go, I think they said the max range is about 1,000 miles and can carry up 30 or 40 passengers, maybe a little more than that. The next one was actually a turbine-powered airplane that had a 2,000-mile range and 200 passengers, looked pretty much like a standard commercial airliner. And the third model was very futuristic looking. It's what we call a blended wing body, which kind of looks like the B-2 bomber, the stealth bomber. Has kind of a no real fuselage discernible. It's just a big flying wing. This one has a little tiny bit of a fuselage, but it's mostly flying wing. And the passengers sit inside more in a room rather than down a thing with a bunch of aisles in it. So anyway, that's a big deal. We've also had several announcements from some smaller companies. One called Zero Avia out of Europe, UK, that did their first prototype test flights with a hydrogen fuel cell powered electric prop airplane that did its first actual flying, and eventually it will be able to take, I believe it was around 10 passengers, and I think the range in that was somewhere around 500 miles. But it's kind of like bigger than a civilian aviation type general aviation airplane, but smaller than what we would have as a commercial airplane. So kind of in the middle there. And they're well on their way to getting their certifications and things, and they've already got some flights under their belt. There's some video out there. So if you go and look up Zero Avia, Zeroavia, you can check them out. Also, Hyperion is going to give Tesla a run for their money. I talked about Hyperion when I had Mike Stritsky on the show a couple of weeks ago. And Hyperion's got a really, really sharp looking, futuristic looking kind of car. And I heard this week from an anonymous source that they're actually going to come out with a fueling station that matches the sleek designs of the car. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. But I guess their theory is if you can afford the car, you can afford your own fueling station too, and it's geared to be kind of a personal fueling station. So that'd be really something to see if it comes out. So looking forward to more announcements on that. Plug Power is still going gangbusters and doing a lot of stuff in Japan and expanding its market pretty well. The truck company Nikola Motors had some rough going last month or so with I think it's people sniping at them from a stock market perspective and trying to screw up their company from a investor perspective. But that company has so much heavy hitting factory and manufacturing and big business backup, like from General Motors and from Ryder Truck and from several other huge companies that do, parts of trucks, suspensions and things like that. It's not like they've just kind of, you know, gone off the edge of a cliff. It's more like there's people trying to knock them off the cliff, but they've got some pretty solid backing. So I'm looking for them to kind of pull out of the doldrums that they're in right now, and in the future really make a big splash in a big way. As far as today's show, a long time ago, I talked about energy and power to kind of frame what this show is all about. And it was one of the first shows that I did. And I want to start off from that perspective because it's occurred to me, in fact, I'll be really specific. I attend some classes that are hosted by the Federal Bureau of Investigation because I have a law enforcement background as well as my flying background. And the last conference we were in, or the last class we were in, talked about people that are defrauding folks using high tech, using computers, using identity theft and things like that. And it really, really made an impression on me. And that's kind of where I'm going to be coming from with today's discussion. But it all centers around energy and power. So we'll get started, and we'll start off with the pitch I gave a couple years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. And that's with the first law of thermodynamics, which says energy is neither created nor destroyed, it just changes form. So energy itself is kind of a hard to get your hands around concept because you can't touch it, you can't see it or feel it, but you can certainly feel the effects of it when it's applied. So energy by definition is a force with the potential to do work or create actions. And probably the most graphic way to kind of describe energy is the wind. If you took a still picture of an outside, you can't really tell if the trees are blowing or not because it's not moving. But if you took a video, you'd see the leaves blowing on the trees from the wind. Now you can't see the wind and you can't see the air unless you live in China. But when you see the wind blowing, you know it's there, and you know it's got energy and it's got motion. It's making things happen. But it's hard to see. It's hard to get your head around what's making the trees move because you can't see much. And then you have the definition of power, which is the measurement of expending a particular form of energy over a given period of time. And time is the critical piece here. So for example, when we want to measure power, like horsepower in a car, we have to measure against a specific time. And so we normally use horsepower. And so the formula for horsepower is 1 horsepower equals 745.7 watts or 33,000 foot-pounds of energy per minute. So there's your time element is 1 minute, and how much energy you're putting into the formula gives you 1 horsepower. So you can have a horse pulling a cart, gives you 1 horsepower. You can be driving a little quad or something, and that gives you maybe 80 horsepower. Or you can be driving a truck or a car that gives you 200 or 300 horsepower. And what's amazing about that relationship is that horse is pretty big. And when you're only feeding it hay and grass and stuff and water, it's going to give you 1 horsepower but it's a pretty big, beefy animal. But we've developed technology that has gotten the power of 45 horses into a little motor that's only a couple, a cubic foot or two of space. And then when you get to big trucks and stuff, you've got a bigger motor, maybe 4 or 5 cubic feet of metal and stuff all put together, that's giving you hundreds of horsepower. And we really don't think about how amazing that is until you really realize that, you couldn't put 150 or 200 horses in front of a car and have it drive because it'd be out of control. I mean, the stupid train between your car and the front horse would be, you know, 100 yards long or something like that. And they're wild animals. You have to keep them under control. So just the technology alone in getting us to that level of horsepower is just pretty amazing. And we take it for granted. And that's the whole point. We take it for granted. But the industrial age and the computer age and the high tech age have created a lot of other things that we take for granted. Back when I was a young man, back in the 70s, if you wanted to make a long distance phone call, you made it on your landline phone because cell phones weren't invented. And it could cost you $1, $2, $3 a minute to talk to somebody in another country on your landline phone. And nowadays, we not only talk to people internationally, we can have a video conference like this Zoom, and it's virtually free. It's mostly included data minutes in your cell phone plan. And that's really just how far we've come. Technology has made a huge impact on our world and on the concept of power. Um, so I'm going to get into this. We're going to be taking a break in a few minutes, but I'm going to start into this by saying, you know, aside from that first definition of energy and power that I gave you that had to do with physical horsepower and things like that, there's another concept of power that's developed along the way. It's actually always been around, but I think we've kind of, with technology, gotten it to a new level. And I want to start off by describing an individual building power, personal power in an organization. So say you're an engineer and you've been working for an engineering company for 4 or 5 years and you decide to go out on your own and you're going to do engineering on your own and start making money. So you get your license from the state, you get your general excise tax license, you stand up an LLC, have a lawyer draft up your limited liability corporation, you have an accountant set up your books, and boom, you go out there and start looking for work, and you start designing things, and you start doing drawings and stuff for a couple of clients. But at the same time, you're also doing the bookkeeping, you're also writing the invoices, you're also depositing the checks in the bank account, you're also paying the taxes and doing all that stuff. And pretty soon you find out that half your time is spent doing engineering and the other half is actually doing administration. So you say, well, I'm going to hire somebody to be my administrative help, and they can do my bookkeeping, they can go to the bank for me, they can do all this other stuff, and I'll focus on engineering. So you hire one person, and now you're able to do more engineering work, and that other person is helping you, giving you power, giving you the power to do more productivity. So now you're doing more work and you're getting bigger contracts. And now you hire 2 or 3 or 4 more engineers. And now they're all really busy. And now you're starting to get so much work that you actually have to start advertising and marketing, and your bookkeeping is getting a little bit more complicated. So maybe you have to hire another person to help do office work and stuff. So then your company grows even more. Now you got employees and you've got workers' comp insurance and you got medical insurance and you got all these things going on, and you start growing. And now that you've got 4 or 5 engineers on staff, now you're actually picking up some really big projects. And now you need a whole bunch more, not only engineers, but you maybe need some designers and just some draftsmen and some other skill sets in there that give your company more capability. And after a while, you become the supervisor, you become the leader, you become the manager of resources and the leader of the people. And in you, there is now power. You've got the power of your entire company behind you. All these employees, all of the goodwill that you've built up, the things that make your company worth something, your reputation, your skills, your talent, your successes, and they're all invested in you. And you actually become the power in that company. Now, it's not the same as the wind power or the solar power or the generator power. It's a personal power, but that's how it grows. It grows when you lead somebody and you grow into this leadership role, and your personal power grows. Well, now you can take that to a new level because of technology today. So what I'd like to do now is, if Eric can do this, is take a quick break, and then I'd like to get into the meat of what I really wanted to talk about, which is the power that we see all around us today and implications we have in all of our society that we have to be aware of. Hey, welcome back to Stan the Energy Man. And when we left off, we were talking about how an individual, when he grows his company, also grows a personal power. And that's a power of your literally what your company's energy is and your operations are. But it also comes with a heavy responsibility. Now you have all these employees working for you. They're depending on you to make sure that the company keeps going so that they get paid and that they can get promoted and they can learn more and they can expand their horizons and meet their personal goals and maybe grow their families and buy their houses and things like that. So there's also incumbent upon that power that you gain from growing your company to the responsibility that you have for the people that are dependent on you. Now let's take that concept of growing a company and let's take it to the next step. What are some of the other powers? And this is not a all-inclusive list, but it's some of the key ones that I wanted to list for you. There's military power. We understand the military has incredible kinetic weapons that can bring to bear in a political sense for another country or to fight off somebody. And then there's the political or the military structure in a military organization where a commander literally has the power of life and death over his own subordinates because he can send them into combat, into harm's way. And that's his legal authority is to do that. They call it a G-series orders when you have a commander that's got the authority to send somebody into harm's way. You got the power of communication. A lot of people really, really miss this. And I think this is important today, especially. There's an old saying back in Shakespeare's day, the pen is mightier than the sword. And that statement is very true to this very day, except that we not only have pens nowadays and pencils and typewriters and word processors, we've got computers and audio and video networks. We have social media. We have communications that can go around the world in seconds to millions and millions and millions of people in a matter of seconds. That means really important information can go out in a matter of seconds, and really bad information, really false information, really misleading information can go out just as fast. And once it goes out, once that bell is rung, it's awful hard to pull it back. So just the power of communications has grown so rapidly in our current technology. And you also have always had the power of charismatic speakers, people, we call them in the military silver-tongued devils. You know, they could sound so wonderful and so brilliant and so caring and so much like they were in your court and we're going to take care of you. And it was all BS. It was all a matter to win your opinion over, and then once they had you, they didn't care anymore. Once they got what they needed from you, whether it was your freedom or your labor or whatever it was, then they didn't care. You were disposable. And that was even apparent in religious institutions where power became a corrupting factor in businesses and religious institutions and politics. Along with communications nowadays is the power of marketing. And this is kind of where that FBI training thing drew me into the discussion of power. Right now, and most of the people, I guarantee 98% of the people in the US are totally oblivious or mostly oblivious to how much of their personal information is available online and you give it to people. It's out there, whether you want it to be out there or not, it's out there because of current marketing, data mining techniques and things like that. So for example, you log onto a website, you want to use a certain app and it says you have to agree to the certain terms of the app. There are terms that I know people have signed up for that they have never read the terms of agreement. And if they did and they didn't like it, they wanted the app so bad, they still agreed to it and hit the accept button. And all of a sudden they're letting people have access to information on their computer, images from the cameras like I have here on their computer, content of their social media, their emails, their bank data. They've given that stuff away free and clear, and those companies could come back and said, well, you agreed. And you would be surprised how much of that is out there and how little privacy most people have. If you do any social media, you have no privacy, period. I can guarantee it. I don't use social media, and I've been tormented by this because I know I could do a lot more on social media and have a lot more people listen to Stan Energy Man's messages, but I don't do it because I know how dangerous social media is from my training in the military. And it's just an incredible amount of power that we've released into the internet system, including the dark internet. That's really the bad place where a lot of your personal information ends up. It ends up being where your identity is stolen, where people do stuff to your finances that you wouldn't want to have done to your worst enemy. Tied to all this, of course, is the power of money. And when you have the money, you can buy information, you can buy marketing, you can buy a lot of stuff. So when you put all of these powers together, the combined power of marketing, of money, of communications, and the last piece, because this is an election year, the political piece, I start to ask the question, with all of this power that we've been able to accumulate and mine and refine and exploit, are we really voting for people that are good leaders, like that company I described, where you worked your way through the company and you're a benevolent leader, that you're taking care of your people because they're taking care of your company? Is that the process? I think that's the process we envision, that we're electing good leaders. But with all of this manipulation that can go on with marketing and with communications and with enough money to buy that influence, are we really getting what we should get, what we deserve in America through our political process as it exists today? The founding fathers certainly had a great vision. The Constitution is still amazing to most people that really understand law and the importance of the concept of free men and the rule of law. The U.S. Constitution is the beacon that the world looks at. It's what makes America great. And it's so disturbing to me that I see people using manipulation and slowly dragging people off message into some utopian idealistic world that is nothing but talk. Just talk. They can't make it happen. They have no plan. They have no idea, but it's just talk. And it's got all the power of reality because they've structured it that way. They've marketed it that way. They made it that way. And it scares me because I see so many people being deceived in our country and around the world with political concepts that just shouldn't be out there. And it all comes from this unique point in time where the power of all these things, communication, marketing, data collection and mining, and political influences and money have all come together to give us an incredibly vulnerable period in our history where these powers can be abused and destroy our country. So I'd like to close with what makes America powerful is its freedom. I used to get asked that all the time. Why is America such a powerful country? Is it the military? Is it the GDP? Is it our ability to control markets around the world? Is it no, it's some of that maybe, but it's the fact that we raise individuals in our society that are free thinkers. And that freedom is secured in the US Constitution. And that US Constitution is based on the concept of government of, by, and for the people. So I'd like everybody to just think about the power that is around us today that we didn't have a long time ago, but is still relevant today in terms of making a good decision on how you vote and who you trust to lead our country. And really take critical analysis. Get away from the hype, get away from the partisan politics, get away from the word lie and the word hate and the word, the words that are nothing but divisive, and start looking at the character of the people that we're trying to elect. And hopefully this election will come out to support the Constitution and the rule of law, because that's what real power in our country is about, and gives us the freedom to be the greatest that there is. So until next week, we'll get back on more traditional power with Stan Energy Man next week. And until then, aloha.